During Wednesday's GOP debate, Ben Carson, a retired pediatric neurosurgeon, had an interesting moment when he was asked to respond to Donald Trump's claims that vaccines cause autism.
Well, let me put it this way. There have been numerous studies, and they have not demonstrated that there's any correlation between vaccinations and autism. Vaccines are very important, certain ones, the ones that would prevent death or crippling. There are others, or a multitude of vaccines, which probably don't fit in that category, and there should be some discretion in those cases. But, you know, a lot of this is pushed by big government.
So I just have to say, all of a sudden, Ben Carson turning back into a doctor? Yeah. It was a really interesting moment in the debate for me. I was like, oh, yeah, right. That's who that guy is.
Unfortunately, it wasn't about the three marks.
Yeah,
I'm not sure besides maybe the five of us.
Man, who are you telling that was a long debate?
It was so interesting because it's almost as if he realized, uh-oh, I'm talking to a conservative audience. They may not agree with me. So then he throws in that thing about big government at the end. Just
and it's really unfortunate that this African-American physician does not support the Affordable Care Act or access to health care for all. In terms of the expansion of Medicaid, in terms of supporting what the president has done. You would think as a physician, he knows that an African-American physician, he would know that African-Americans need health care coverage.
So, Congresswoman Lee, I think this is so interesting because, you know, all of us who grew up at a certain time period were all told to read Dr. Carson's book. And, you know, he was this kind of...
watch the TV movie.
Right. He's kind of the up from, you know, nothing. But he becomes valuable in part to the GOP. And actually, let me state this as a question. Is it that he is valuable to the GOP in part because he is an African-American with such a strong critique of the president? And you know, it's not to say that he's not standing on his own merits, but you know, I guess I'm wondering sort of then what the value of that particular critique is to the party.
So here's my vantage point on it, and I say this as someone who deeply admires him as a physician and his pull yourself up by the bootstrap story, the Jamaican mother, you know, I have to always throw that in there.
And because you share.
Exactly. That's everything, for everything that he has accomplished. Ben Carson, as a Republican presidential candidate, I have found it mind-boggling at his success. And the only conclusion I can come to is he does not help the Republican Party because he is an African-American man. He is helpful to certain elements of the Republican Party because he is an absolutely non-threatening black man. From 2008 through 2012, the discussion is Barack Obama an angry black man. And Republicans, they love Ben Carson. They loved Herman Cain. He's quiet. He's affable. He's meek. He doesn't fight back with people. Doesn't have much to say on policy. And I think that is why he, frankly, is doing so well in the Republican Party.
And yet that said, when you look at that GOP stage, two Latino candidates, an African-American candidate, and a woman running, it just does actually look better than the Democratic Party, whose base is, in fact, much more
one of the things that Republicans still have to figure out is, and it goes back to Sarah Palin, actually, when she was the vice presidential choice for McCain. Being a woman doesn't necessarily mean that women will vote for you.
Exactly.
Being an African-American does not mean that African-Americans will vote for you. It does come down to your policy position.
But it doesn't draw those voters, but what it does do is say, if someone wants to level a charge of racism against the party, they can say, excuse me, your candidate slate is actually less diverse. So it's not so much that it helps with those marginal voters, but that because there are many white Americans who don't want to be seen and understood as racist, it kind of allows you to say, oh, this is not a party with a race problem.
He thinks like we do.
Right. He's like he does.
At least Michael Ferguson deserved what he got.
There are two things. I think one is precisely what you're talking about will probably increase pressure on Democrats to put a Latino or even an African-American on the ticket. I think it's a factor they're going to have to think about. Second, Ben Carson actually stands, I think, in a long historical tradition that conservatives in our country, whether back in the day when they were even segregationist Democrats, have always liked the up-from-your-bootstraps self-help argument. It goes back to Booker T.
Yeah, he got to go to the White House early at the turn of the century.
Booker T. Washington, and it's, you know, I don't want to be unfair to Booker T. He was a complicated person, but they like that. People like Tim Scott, people like J.C. Watts, who are successful Republicans.
But look at the difference between the reaction Congressman, I'll shut up. But the reaction to Colin Powell, the reaction to Condoleezza Rice, they are very different in their persona, you know, and they have been strong. Colin Powell has been adamant about his, his admiration for Barack Obama, and that makes him, as a black man in the Republican Party, persona non grata.
But when the Republican Party realizes that Dr. Carson has no support in the African American community, it's going to be interesting how they see him as being valuable to the party. Because believe you me, the African American community, we get it in terms of pulling yourself up by your bootstrap, but we also get it in terms of opportunity and the federal government providing that basis for us to achieve equality and a just society for us and our people. And Dr. Carson certainly is not speaking to justice and equality and opportunity for African Americans or people of color. So when they see the black community doesn't support him,
although he did speak to the fact that vaccines are safe. Thank you to Julie Pace and to Michelle Bernard. Very nice to be in.